Welcome, friends, to another exciting episode of A VGM Journey. And I'm your host, The Messenger. The track that we're playing in this week's show is Grand Canyon Golf Course from the game Neo-Turf Masters. And it was composed by Takushi Hiyamuta. We got a real fun show for you guys, something a bit different. And I also have a guest with me for the show, which I know some of you guys might be pretty familiar with him on the VGM Journey Discord, and he's also another eerie podcaster as well. Everyone, give a real warm welcome to Mr. HeatOOveride of Bring the Pain. Welcome to the show.
Oh, yeah, Alex, it's time to bring the pain. Oh, should I call you the messenger on here? Oh, yeah, let me do a little thing.
Have you ever talked to the Macho Man ever before? Oh, yeah, brother. Yeah, feeling the pain.
How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Crazy day. But you know what brings a lot of people together, of course, is VGM music. So we're going to bring the VGM today and just play and have some awesome discussions about some awesome tracks that have a lot of similarities, both me and you growing up. Memories. I don't know a lot of your memories with these tracks. I know my memories. So it's going to be fun talking about a lot of that.
I think just I don't know, I guess kind of spoil some things for the show. I don't really have too much memories with these tracks, but I could definitely talk about the sports and also just kind of maybe sports gaming in that era.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is going to be a pretty 90s heavy show.
It really is.
Actually, I think every single one of these tracks are from a 90s sports game. So,
yeah,
there you go.
That's it. And that's kind of the thing. We looked at all this, and when you think about sports games and just me and you both having sports in common, talking about how the Florida Panthers made the finals. Like we said that's what we brought up on the other podcast, and now you're seeing it for tuition. So like to do sports and to do that, it was always competitive for me and my friends. That's how we grew up. We were throwing money, Twinkies, whatever we could throw on these games, which is probably bad. And it's probably why I give out DFS advice now. But at the same time, these games all have significant meaning to me in my life. I mean, through musical, through the times I may have won or lost, memories with friends, trends that set things. I have millions of stories that could go with each one of these games. And that's why picking a song from each one of them was so great. And I loved the challenge that you kind of threw at me because, I knew you were going to come back and play off of what I was doing. And then I was like, all right, I want to see what he brings. And you brought your golf, bro.
Yeah, that Neo-Turf Masters track. I mean, golf music surprisingly is really good. And I think what's crazy about Neo-Turf Masters is the soundtrack's got a whole lot of energy to it. And it's a pretty fast-paced kind of game, even though it's a golf game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, for you guys always talk about the golf games having amazing music. And here I am. I never played them. That play ball or the golden tee. The golden tee. That's what I've ever played. Like I gave it a couple shots and that was like, because rolling the little wheel or the ball or the marble, whatever you want to call it, or the extra sized pool ball. That's what I always thought it was. And just giving it that good whirl was always fun. But then at the end, it's like, I suck at this. I don't understand it. I don't know what I'm doing. So I just quit.
I almost went with something from any of the Mario sports games. So, I mean, when it comes to golf video games, I mean, my only real experience is with the Mario Golf series, which they're pretty simple to get into.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. The Mario, and that's something I've just not played either. But I know that those games, and like when they brought out Mario Strikers, those are all big games. Those are just fun games that a lot of people. But for me, growing up, it was always about what was in the game, and the moniker EA Sports, it's in the game. We needed that realism. It's what made me and my friends step away from Tecmo Super Bowl, because my friends, we all got sick and tired of Jerry Rice catching it on three people And all these people nowadays, and I don't mean no disrespect to the people that still play Tecmo Super Bowl. Look, they're all great. They dissected this game. They know if you have a great left tackle that your kick return, your punt return, dude's going to be awesome. It don't matter who it is. And you know what? I don't care about that. What I care about is that realism. And Jerry Rice ain't always going to catch a ball on 3 people. And that always happened in Tecmo Bowl. When you throw $5 or $10 up or you're double or nothing before your friend has to go for the night and you might be out $20, $30, you don't need some cheesy touchdown to beat you and put you in a hole or to bring you even, which was probably the case most of the time.
Oh man, it's always a good time though.
It is. Oh man. It just is money. Did you and your friends throw money up?
No, we have not.
Oh gee. That must be a bad influence.
Oh man, gotta watch out.
Yeah, don't go to my website, right? It's like so, the whole thing with video games and growing up and what I'm talking about, and as we're talking about, like you have your experiences, and I don't want to say it was all money related or Cheetos related or Twinkie related. It was more about just learning the game itself too, like being able to play these games with your friends. And then my one friend, he wouldn't even let me go over to these other people's houses because he was like, yo, they don't even let you fake punts on 4th down. They make you, if you buy in or if you're just playing with them, they always make you punt on 4th down. I'm like, no, not every time does somebody want to punt on 4th down. So when you get these different friends and they have these different things. The one guy that always was really next to me in these games, and I didn't have to say anything to, is Dewan. He's just one of my good friends, and I had a lot of great friends I played a lot of 2-player games with, like Contra 3, Alien Wars, stuff like that, Contra, Super C, Life Force, all those games, beat 'em ups, and he was one dude I never had to say a word to. He literally was just like me in a lot of ways, and I'm pretty sure you have this with your friends or a couple friends that you don't really have to coach them. But then I have this one friend that was really good at games, but I had to coach him. So it was kind of like different. And it was kind of like you passing the torch. If I didn't have him there, I would have at least my other friend, John, that was his name, and he would be there to play Jackal with me or all this stuff. But I'll tell you what, man, some people, man, rely on that game genie too much.
Oh man, I forgot about the game genie.
Ooh, you know what a lot of people forget about is the X Play for the Super Nintendo. Do you know about that?
No, I do not.
Wow. Okay. Well, first time on a VGM journey. The X Play was an online service that you could hook up your AOL service or MSN service back in the day to. You plug it right in the side and you could go online and play games. So Super Mario Kart was on there, Street Fighter 2 was on there, Mortal Kombat was on there. Of course, you'd get lag, but sometimes you got some real good connections, and it kept your wins and loss for the week. It kept your wins and loss all time. And then it kept your records in each set of game. So of course, in Super Mario Kart, you had your battle, you had your races, you had your records in those, and you could play this completely online. And at the same time, if you picked up your phone and the other person picked up their phone, you could talk, and then you could talk between it, hang it back up, and then bang, put it back on, and you're playing some more games. I actually met this one dude that was really good friends with the guy that's done all of my tattoos, Dave. His brother was the guy that knew this dude, and I brought it up to him, and he was like, "Oh, dude, yeah, he's just not fortunate in life, wheelchair stuff like that. So he plays a lot of video games." And I thought he was just a really cool dude, but he was one of the main guys I would play with. But yep, it's just like online now. You go in, you hit, it says searching for opponent. It would bring up an opponent within your level, and you would play them. That's how it worked. That's the X Band.
I gotta say, that sounds pretty neat.
It was cool. It was the first time you really got to do that without a PC back then.
Well, I'm thinking that I think now is about a good time to get into your first track for tonight. And looks like we're going to go with the intro for Chavez 2, also known as Boxing Legends of the Ring, composed by Mark Ganus and Dean Morell.
Chavez, 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. 2. Chavez, Chavez.
that track that you guys just listened to, that was the intro theme from the game Chavez 2, and it was composed by Mark Ganus and Dean Morell.
Woo. That's some hot stuff. Messenger, what do you think?
I think that was pretty good.
What I liked about it was, and for me to say this, first of all, Chavez 2, they tried to make this a whole different game than Chavez, and it sucked. It sucked bad. I didn't like it. But the reason why I took the song is because I thought that this intro song was definitely a step up from the regular Chavez song. So when I wanted to talk about Chavez, I wanted to bring in this Chavez 2 song, get the familiarity, let everybody hear kind of because nobody ever thinks about Chavez. Like, they're just trying to bring him back up right now. I see it all over the internet now. They're like, Chavez was 89-0 and 1 and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but you didn't play the games. And did you play these games, Alex?
I have not.
Did you play Riddick bow boxing? That style they had back then?
Nope.
All right, so they went in Chavez 2. They went to more of like a 3D off to the side kind of view, so you could kind of see your opponent's body and kind of throw it. To me, it didn't work the way it should have. When you had Riddick bow boxing and Chavez went off of that, they had that normal side by side kind of Street Fighter look. It was, cartoony looks, and they came to the middle. You had your low punch, your left punch, your right punches, your high punch. You had to hit, the R2 button, and you could throw an uppercut. If you hit the other one, you could clinch up. If you hit L and R, you would do a double block. If you hit L, you would block with your left. If you hit R, you would block with your right arm. So you could literally break it down like that. When it translated and they changed that view in part 2, it just sucked. But I bought Chavez, the original Chavez, like $5 a long time ago. And I was just really impressed. And, I was just out for a boxing game and I wanted to play it. So me and my friends ended up playing this game and boxing the daylights out of each other. And it just really was real fun to get into it because you had your big guys, your small, fast guys, and it really made a difference. You could take a big lumbering guy and you'd have this reach and you would keep the guy away. But then when you got inside, you had the smaller guys would have these combos and you could rip them off and get on that body and then back out. So it was really, I like the intuition to it because you were allowed to attack from either side. Like I said, you could block from either side, and it gave you everything you really needed in a boxing game without all the super punches, like Ready to Rumble, or building up all these other things, like a lot of things. I will say give props to Fight Night. Fight Night was an amazing boxing game. So I that style's great, but when it came back, the old school, we're talking 90s now, it was Chavez.
Yeah, definitely some real good stuff. I kind of hate to say that, like, boxing video games is kind of a blind spot for me. So I do agree with you though that Fight Night is pretty good, but I think at that time it's like, I'm pretty familiar with Mike Tyson's Punch Out and also Super Punch Out for the Super Nintendo, and that was pretty much it for me.
I mean, honestly, that might have been a hit for a lot of people, though. Like a lot of people just want to go back to those games where it's just easy 1-2. When you got to talk about blocking left and right, and you gotta, like I said, the way you could block. If you knew that your friend was going to throw the left or a right, or this friend was going to throw an uppercut or a side hook to your body, you had to block those levels too. You couldn't block high and expect you was going to block low. You had to block low. You had to learn this game. The physics were there practically. So it was great to see that put together in the way they put that together. And like I said, when I brought up Riddick Bowe, it was practically the same game, just rehashed with a different name.
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of research on the game, and so I was finding like different names for the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that.
Oh, apparently somebody's calling me. Shit, got to cut that out.
Right.
And actually, what was weird about it was, uh, based off of whatever region you're living in, the game had a different name, and it wasn't that much different, but there were some subtle differences. I guess with the, I don't know, according to my research, like Chavez 2, apparently there's a little more Spanish in the game.
you know, I kind of like that. Yeah, I don't know what they're saying half the time. I'm practically one language.
Definitely some good stuff.
Yeah. Let's flip it on. Let's move to another track because I know it's about to heat up right now. And a lot of people don't know what's about to hit their ears.
We kind of kick things off with an intro track, but, let's go with a track where, somebody, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be you, but somebody, winds up finding a little bit of victory. And that we're going to go with Victory from Slam and Jam 96 featuring Magic and Kareem. And this was composed by Chris Lamb and Burke Trieschmann. All right, that track that you guys just listened to, that was Victory from the game Slam and Jam 96 featuring Magic and Kareem. And that was composed by Chris Lamb and Burke Trieschmann.
Ooh, yeah, the Magic Man Takushi. Yeah. Dude, you ever play this game?
I have not.
That again, this goes back to that 3DO thing, man. It was in the arcades too, from what I saw, but I never played it there. And it just Magic and Kareem. My buddies used to hate. They used to get mad because me being a Lakers fan, I always had Magic and Kareem, and they had fake Jordan, fake Barkley. They had fake people, and it wasn't even like when you think about it, the mid '90s. Why were you throwing like Magic and Kareem on there? Magic had just left. Kareem's been gone. You had practically, this was the Vlade Divac era, and they didn't want to feature any of that. They just said, Magic Kareem, put the name on it, and then the regular Slam and Jam was really nice too. The '95 version and stuff like that. But what really got me was the big graphics, the way the crowd, the shooting, the mechanics of the game, the stealing, the dunking. It had that arcade feel to it, but it wasn't like any of those other basketball games that went full arcade. Even like NBA Live 95 during this time, it got real slippery. And so you needed something that was really crisp, really tight in the game. And even a game that we used to play a lot, of course, all these games we put money up to. Again, this goes back to my buddy Dewan, was NCAA basketball for the Super Nintendo. And when I got the 3DO and then eventually, PlayStation version, I got, Magic and Kareem, and then I had those. That became the basketball game that we played for a minute.
I did watch a little bit of gameplay for this, and I think for my takeaway of it is kind of like what you were saying, that the gameplay, it doesn't really go full arcade, but it also doesn't go full sim either. I've seen like a lot of pretty ridiculous looking dunks, and it was pretty common for sports games at that time to maybe not exactly have the players association license or even like the league license, so you kind of had just generic either city teams
Mhm.
names and stuff, or you just have like fake player names.
I mean,
And then like somehow they have the license for like one or two players, and that's pretty much it.
and that made it hard, like I said. But again, like what you brought up right there, the stealing, the passing was nice, being able. But you brought up like so some of the videos, the monster jams, and there was a commentator during this game who was like monster jam, and they would pull down they could break the backboards because this was when like Shaq was breaking backboard time, so they could break the backboards in this game too. So they would go up and they would do this monster jam where they would pull it and it would pull the actual rim down and do that little bob it would do. And they would do it. And then, the guy would say something, but every once in a while, you break the glass.
I think that's got to be pretty cutting edge at the time too.
I agree with it. I agree 100%. And but again, this was like an arcade game. The 3DO was putting it out there. The 3DO had the power, the sound. When we go back to that track, and even if we go to 96, if you do the 96 open and you watch that video, the bass drop. I talk about this all the time, how all my video game systems were always hooked up to my actual system. And so when I had games that had bass drops like this thing does, like this game does, it just was rocking. Like it was do do, and my room was shaking. And my parents didn't yell at me as much as many other parents. I'm thankful of that because that was loud music I was playing a lot of the time.
Man, if it was my parents, I would have gotten my ass whooped.
Yeah. I mean, most parents probably would have. I'm lucky.
I'm actually surprised that I haven't even heard of this game until recently when, you were sharing your tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely very 90s sounding. And I was saying to you that though I find the voice samples to be pretty cheesy, I still thought it was pretty cool too.
That's what it was. And again, going back to those 90s and hearing that cheese and just kind of like I guess in a way it was like they were trying to ska it up. So if you ever had ska on your podcast mentioned before, I thought that that's what they were kind of going to. And that's kind of the feel that I started giving to when I was doing a lot of these tracks and we were going over them. It was kind of like you were getting that feeling from a lot of it because another track that we're going to talk about shortly has that same element in it as well.
I wonder if that's going to be the next track. I might be right, might be wrong, but we're about to find out. And that we're going to move on to main menu number 1 from the game FIFA 94. And this was composed by Graeme Coleman.
1, 2, 3, kick it.
All right, that track that you guys just listened to, that was main menu number 1 from the game FIFA 94, and that was composed by Graeme Coleman.
Woo! What'd you think? What'd you think?
I mean, I keep saying that the tracks are really cool, but this one, it's got a little of everything, at least like 90s wise.
Yeah.
It's got kind of a nice hip hoppy vibe, and actually, the part that I really liked was that little beatboxing
Yeah.
section.
Yeah, dude, that's what I said. Like when we were talking about scarring it up, man. Like how can you not scar anything up with the beatboxing? I remember sitting outside of school back in 5th grade with my friends going, and then you had the other guy going, and then you'd be like, "What the heck?" You know what I'm talking about. It was almost like breakdancing and beatboxing was like a thing. And then you always got the one friend, he would come in, you get a couple people, I'd get the drum beat, somebody would get some bass going, and then you got your boy rapping. And just like, what's going on? So this is really where it goes. Me and my buddy got bored of playing football and basketball all the time. So we looked at each other and we said, what other sports can we play? So we tried soccer. And soccer became really fun because we didn't know anything about it. But of course, during this time, these years, this is when the soccer games were actually kind of cool the way they would play them. So you would always get your main soccer game one year. Then about the next year, they would do a World Cup version of that. And I don't know if they still do that because I think they've incorporated all into the soccer games. I did play some of the more recent ones, but when I went back to that, that was always like the way they would separate it. So you would really have to wait to get to that next game, kind of the way that you would have college football before Madden, NCAA before Madden, that we're gonna actually get this year. But that's for me was the beginning of it. And it was one of the first games I also bought for my 3DO. And during the half times, between intermissions, they would always they had this thing called greatest moments in soccer history. It said soccer, did not say le football. And you get Pele doing some wild stuff. You get some crazy goalie. They had a dude streaking. Like, what was 3DO thinking? Like, you got a dude streaking in the middle of a game? This is 1994. There's a guy streaking. Why are we seeing this? But it was apparently a highlight in soccer history.
That is really crazy. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it was insane. And just the way the 3DO upping it up, better controls, the better music, this is where really soccer. This is where Moby was first introduced to me, and body rock, y'all, can't stop y'all. I don't think you can get shut down if I'm singing it, right? and so those were songs, and again, we just got to it, and from here, when I got my PC version of 2001, oh man, one of the most amazing games that I just played so much, go through a whole season, win the cup, and then being able to just play that with my friends as well too, just shooting up those lobs, doing the bicycle kicks, sliding out, trying to avoid the cards, making it right, learning that you got to tackle more than slide, or you're going to be shorthanded the rest of the game. And they ain't coming back in like hockey.
Speaking of hockey, I don't know how different. So I probably should say that track was specifically from the 3DO version of FIFA 94, and I don't know how different it is compared to the SNES version or Genesis version. I mean, obviously, sound wise, I mean, it's on a different level. So it kind of reminded me of the Sega CD version of NHL 94, where it wasn't really too different gameplay wise, but it had like a higher frame rate. There was some full motion video in the beginning, and the audio was, a lot better than the SNES and Genesis version of that game. So, I mean, how was FIFA on the 3DO?
So overall, I mean, like I said, going back to the controls, being able to play it and then oh, dude. So the announcer's insane. I'm pretty sure the dude's name was John Watson, right? Or something like John Motson. And I'm going back like real far, but he was straight. They had two commentators, and this was Madden on crack. right? This dude was just off. He was like, oh, he's got the volley. And he's got that British voice going on. That was a bad British voice. And he's like, he's passing over to Messi. But back then in 94, that was Kobe Jones for the U.S. team. That was Eric Wijnaldum team. So, you had a lot of those guys going in. So it was really fun, being able to mix that up. And the difference between the two was the sound, because the game was about the same, but of course the 3DO being just the more powerful system, you got the faster gameplay, the faster game rates. You had the different screens too. So like what I like to do is I like to actually back it out a little bit in a lot of soccer. So when you go online, and believe me, I've been online playing people in FIFA, and you will get toasted. The first time I went, I think I lost 13-3. And I was like, what the heck just happened? He was like, what screen are you playing with? And I was like, what does that mean? Anything? I'm playing with this. He's like, no. You can't play soccer games like that. You have to back it out. You have to be able to see the field, because if you can't, you don't really know where you're going to pass, or you're going to be able to set anything up. When you're playing with those limited screens, you're not going to see it. So that's why everybody goes, oh, look how beautiful the soccer games are today. But you're playing so close to the guys at times that you're not seeing the rest of the field. It makes a difference. And that was a difference. And the minute he told me that, I flipped my screen, and all of a sudden we're having 9 to 10 games. I'm like, what? This ain't soccer anymore. This is football. Is it?
Man, I gotta tell you, my FIFA experience, it is super limited. I mean, I played a little bit of like some of the newer games, and I gotta tell you,
Yep.
I'm pretty bad at them.
You need that screen, bro. That's all it is. It's completely different. And it does suck. Like I said, it makes it really small. It makes the guy small. Like, you just got to find that screen. But that's the whole thing that changes it up. Is like, again, it comes back to it, because when you don't have that screen, you're just going to hit your A button or whatever button you got. See, the 3DO had ABC. You throw it there, and then there's somebody already there, and that's a big thing. So that dude intercepts that ball. Their guy's right next to you, guy. He lobs that up. He's gonna have a breakaway. Well, that's I think it's still called a breakaway in soccer, isn't it?
Oh, I have no idea.
He's got a free shot on the goal, eh? But it was coming back, and it had everything. You had your corner kicks, and then when you went into overtime, and you went to a sudden a shootout, you got to be the goalie. Then you had to be the goalie. So when you was going up against your friend, you're like, all right, I'm gonna block your shot. But are you? Because you only really had left or right to go, and you could either dive low or dive high. And it didn't really work out a lot, but somebody would always miss, and that game would end. And that's what was the fun about it, is that, again, we got bored of the basketball. We got bored of this Tecmo Super Bowl, Jerry Rice, Henry Eller catches. Don't think I'm going to throw Henry Eller in there. He had 81 too for the Rams, right? And it just got boring. So when we incorporated soccer and eventually NHL, that's what then just opened up my mind completely. This is when and how I became a hockey fan.
Well, this next track, I think might kind of suit your mood a little bit. So I was going to go with this John Madden Football 93 track, but maybe I should hold that off just a little bit later, and we can go with this track from NHL 98. This is the intro theme, and this was composed by Jeff Van Dyke and Saki Kaskas.
Are you willing to donate your body? Got a problem with authority? Would you stop a speeding bullet? Are you afraid of the masked man? Come on! Bring it on! Think you've got a game?
All right, that track that you guys just listened to, that was the intro theme from NHL 98. It was composed by Jeff Van Dyke and Saki Kaskas.
Yeah, dude, you made me forget about Saki Kaskas. And when I went looking, and I was like, of course, NHL 94 being that 94, the game that kind of brought me into hockey forever. Like, that's the game that started me with hockey. So if anybody out there listening right now, you will know that Mr. Heat00veride was introduced to hockey because we got bored of football games, basketball games. We tried a soccer game, and the next game was hockey. So, of course, I'm an LA Kings fan. So the first guy I had control of was Wayne Gretzky, Luke Robitaille. I had the whole team. It was just amazing. And my buddy was a Blackhawks fan. So, he had a strong team too. So we used to go back and forth. I would actually play with the Rangers too, because I didn't mind Messi. Or yeah, that was right. And for this track, the way it sets it up, the way it talks to you, it's just like, and then brings in that final thing about the goalie, fear the goalie. This was the era, like, well, I'm going to, that NHL games became really big. Also, it was also the same year that my other friends finally started playing Madden 98 and NHL 98, and we all fell in love. The battles we had in NHL 98 was just crazy. They were crazier because I only had my one boy back in the day, right? But when I moved ahead, I had to deal with this dang Philadelphia Flyer fan and his freaking Legion of Boom. And then I had to deal with this Colorado Rocky dude and Patrick Waugh. And I'm like, this is unfair. Because during that time, the Kings that was like Rob Blake era and Ziggy Palffy. What was about to be Ziggy Palffy, but that goes to the 2002. This started my friends into it, but when we got to 2002, it was over, man. It was. I had to call my Kings the Bumpuses because the only time I could hang with those teams, the Legion of Boom, is I had to hit them like a hockey game. You had to actually hit when there was a team that was better than you. You couldn't outshoot them. The only thing you could do was hit them, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I will admit that I actually don't have too much experience with NHL 98. I actually played like quite a bit more of 99, the next year's version.
Hey,
And
it's the way it goes. Sometimes you just have it's exposure, right?
well, part of my problem was I wasn't a PlayStation kid. I was an N64 kid, and for whatever reason, like NHL 99 was the only EA Sports NHL game on that system. So, yeah, my choices were a bit limited.
Oh man. I used to play Madden 99 a lot on the Nintendo 64. I really loved it. And it just, it was just one of those things you kind of just start out and you're like, okay. And and the Rams weren't even really that good too. So it really sucked. But at the same, this was before the Rams. This was before the greatest show on turf showed up. So this was the precursor. I still had a pretty good defense. I had Kevin Carter, DeMarco Farr down low. So, I was able to rush the passer, and my secondary was really good for the Rams back then too. I won't talk about the secondary in Tecmo Super Bowl at all, so we ain't gonna bring that up. But yeah.
Well, and I'm a huge Pittsburgh Penguins fan, and 98, 99, I mean, that was that era where the Pens, they weren't as good as they were in the early 90s, but they weren't quite terrible yet like they were in the early 2000s. I mean, at that time, I mean, Lemieux retired the first time and they still had Yager.
Yep.
So it wasn't like, it wasn't a bad team.
No, you still had your team. And that's the thing is on 2002, that was Yager made was it Lemieux made the cover?
It was Lemieux.
Lemieux made the cover. And and like that, I didn't even have for any of the systems. That was when I was full PC Messenger. Like that was I had the PC version, man, and that was even so much better because I had at the time I had the NVIDIA Voodoo whatever. It was one of the better cards that came out. I had bought the best one, but it was too big. So I had to take it back and get this other one. And man, and I had, the upgraded sound, the Sound Blaster 16-bit channel. I had it all. And this, we this is one game that we played on the computer, literally hovered around. Of course, I had a 19-inch monitor, which helped. We weren't sitting in front of our 24, 27-inch old console TVs. We were playing this on a computer, and the controls were amazing. I have these two. It was the Cytec P750 controllers. Actually had the throttle control on it, so I could play my games. It had the analog stick as well too, like the flying games is what I was talking about. Like you get it a lot. That's what the computers were known for, a lot of simulations and things, and you had to be able to toggle that speed. So that was right there. I still got those two controllers, and to this day, it was a USB hookup, and that's what we played it on. And man, I can't tell you the battles we had, just flipping the controller back to each other, hitting, just having fun, and then finding out that Ziggy Palfy is also a Cinco de Mayo babe too, man. Yeah.
Oh man, you and Ziggy Palfy,
my guy.
I do want to ask you this. So with all the EA sports games, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but do you find that the NHL games, they're like the easiest games to get into, to learn to play and all that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Easily. There's nothing easier. Like I talked about, soccer being able to lob and do all these controls, and you had to change your camera view. If you didn't do that, you were just toast. And then you go back to Madden, were you going to spin? Spin sucked in some of those games, or then spin was too slow, or then you did your jukes, or you did your power. You had to, or you didn't have to do anything. Them early Madden 94, when you was trying to tackle Walter Payton or Emmitt Smith, you just run people over. You didn't have to do anything. You have to dive, you had to jump. Although people did used to jump back then. That was a cheesy thing to do, was jump a lot. So, to me, hockey is the easiest. And who wouldn't want to fight? Like, fighting was easy too, man. That was fun.
It seemed like they would change up how fighting works in the NHL games over the years, but it always seemed like no matter what they did, it was always a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like when you get that, like, so again, during these era of EA, and then extending all the way to 2006, 2007 Maddens, everything, EA was always trying to add something. So when I brought up the goalie talk earlier, when they brought up the hit stick in Madden, and then that hit stick was transferred over eventually into the NHL games. Even back in the day, in the NHL 94, remember that time when you finally got to crash somebody through the glass? For the second time on this podcast.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, as much as I love NHL 94, I mean, it's not just a really great sports game, it's a really great game in general. The one thing I don't like about it is that there's no fighting in that.
Yeah, that's the sad part. I mean, you just had to kind of like go in manual goalie to kind of make things more exciting with your friends at times, because you're like, no fighting.
I say now's about a good time to move on to our next track. So I know we were talking about Madden a bit, so why don't we play the intro theme from John Madden Football 93? And this was composed by Alistair Hirst. Alrighty, that track that you guys just listened to, that was the intro theme from John Madden Football 93, and it was composed by Alistair Hirst.
Yo, dude, right from the go, when I and this is when Madden finally took over. We did 92, but man, I remember the first day I put that cartridge in. Now, Madden 94 is purely a better game. And I know the Genesis Madden 94 was truly amazing because they had the bigger people and everything. But man, the music was just music in those games. But 93, when you started out and you heard womp, 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 Madden, Madden, and you're like, what? And they cut into some guy going, touchdown. I'm like, bro, this is so insane. But I will never, for all of my life and all of eternity, I literally still have a mental problem. I walk around and that song, I was like, dun, 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 Madden, Madden. I can't get it out of my head in like 30 years.
Yeah, I was saying that the early Madden games, for whatever reason, like they had like these kind of, I don't want to say over the top intro music, but it was a little over the top.
They literally were smearing them in your face. They're like, this is John Madden football. Remember, that was just it. Hi, everybody. It's John Madden. No, you're getting Madden, Madden.
And then they really drive home the point that this is a football game. So, you know, you're getting like your huts and
to the beat too. That's the funny thing about this episode that was so fun. We have so many cheesy ska things going on. And again, it just relates to what you keep saying is like, this is just 90s music. It's just all over the place. It's like, hey, you can do something. All right. It's in the song. It's not in the game. It's in the song.
Did they still have the ridiculous ambulance driving on the field, running over players on 93?
Yeah, that was on there. I'm pretty sure that was a 94 thing. I want to say it was a 93 thing too. It's been way too long to remember that since I heard. Although the easy way to remember that is just go play the Dolphins with Dan Marino. That dude gets hurt in the first 3 plays every single time. No doubt.
Oof.
We always hated taking the Dolphins. It didn't matter if it was the 84 Dolphins. It didn't matter if it was the present Dolphins. That man was plastered within 3 plays. My buddy was like, bro, he died on the first play. And I'm like, all right, let's just restart the game. I'm not going to take your $5. I just, with a Dan Marino mercy rule, it just sucked. I swear, if anybody out there has ever played the Madden 93 or Madden 94, especially Madden 94, because they had more year teams then too, he was just plastered right from the go. That dude just, I don't even know. It was like Tecmo Super Bowl and Lorenzo White's ball control in 19. Man, every time that dude had like every great stat. He could catch out the backfield for the Oilers. He could do it all. You know, he had surrounded by Drew Hill, Ernest Givens, you know, he had Warren Moon. And every time that man touched the ball, it was the same way. The minute that man hit the fall, the thing, you'd be like, I'm going to throw a pass. I mean, he at least lasted longer than Aaron Rodgers did last season.
You know, that is true.
He had to get tackled. Man, football games. But honestly, where's football with you? Did you play a lot of them? Did you play a lot in the middle 2000s? Because Madden 2006 is one of the best games I've ever played. So where'd you get?
You know, I didn't really play too many of the 90s Madden games.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but you kind of like hit the nail on it on the mid 2000s Maddens.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I think I want to say the first one that I played was Madden 05.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right.
I'm actually looking at my GameCube collection right now, and I'm looking at my copy of Madden 07, and that
See, I didn't play that one.
I think I might want to play that soon.
we actually, well, I just said I didn't play that one. I did. I bought Madden 07 and Madden 08. It was about, sorry about that. It was about that time we were still playing Madden 06 because Madden 06, that's when, like, you know, everything came. Everybody loves Madden 2005. Don't get that wrong. But at the same time, what 2006 did just made everything, the timing of the passes, the whole online, like I couldn't play Madden 06 online because the glitches and everything, that the holdups would throw me off, because right before a game, I would hit my controller, I would hike the ball, I pump fake left, I pump fake right, and I'd go over the middle, or I'd pump fake right, go left. And if that 1 second off from that lag from being online would happen, it would be over for me. So I didn't play a lot of those games online. How about you?
It was more of just either play through the franchise mode, by myself kind of deal,
Mm-hmm.
or just screw around and put up like 60 plus points on the Cleveland Browns. I mean,
And again, going back to Madden 93, that was with my friend Dewan, of course, and moving on. And then I was able to finally get my friends, like I had mentioned a couple times, to really play Madden 98. And that was right at the end. That's when, we had Tony Banks and just horrible people. That was like right after Lawrence Phillips era, after the Rams were like, yeah, we don't need Jerome Bettis. We're going to draft this guy. And, rest his soul, but man, that man had some demons, massive demons, and they gave up everything. But that man was always good for 2 weeks and 2 touchdowns in week 1, and that would always piss a few of my fantasy football people off. But the whole thing, and it's fine that. And then my brother-in-law is really who played a lot of the Madden 2004, 2005, 2006, especially 2006. You brought up franchise. I know that both of our wives hated some of those weekends, because he would be franchising all week, I'd be franchising all week. Then he would come down, and then I'd be like, look at my franchise team. Then he'd be like, look at my franchise team. And then he'd be like, let's play our franchise teams. And then we had our together franchise teams. And I will tell you this, man, I drafted 2 of the greatest players I'd ever drafted. And the quarterback's name was Sean Alderman, and the middle linebacker's name was Lance Briggs. And when those guys finally got old, he couldn't win a championship during those franchise years with those guys. But when those guys finally got old, he looked at me and he was like, your boy Briggs is slowing down. And we were talking, he would go AFC, I'd go AFC or something like that. And we would move the teams out, make our own things, do everything together. And when we would get to that game, I'm telling you, we had some really boring games, Messenger. It was like the one Super Bowl was 9-6. We couldn't run each other, dude. Even with that great Alderman dude, we couldn't score.
When it comes to football, I'm going to ask you this, which I feel like I already know your answer since, you did say that 9-6 score was boring. Do you prefer like just like a high scoring, just total slugfest? We're talking like 60 something to 50 something kind of game, just like no defense whatsoever? Or are you more into like kind of a more, I don't know, I guess just a tightly contested game, like a 13-7 kind of deal?
Oh, no, I'm actually right in the between there. I like a 27-34 game any kind of day. You get a few scores, you get a few field goals. And this goes for both, I would say, for video game systems and real football. But when it comes to real football, you could use the Rams and Chiefs game back when Jared Goff played for us. And you had one of the greatest games that a lot of people say is like the greatest game they had ever saw, where the Rams and the Chiefs just kept scoring back and forth. And then you have where the Rams play the Patriots in a Super Bowl, and it's a complete snooze fest. I think when you get to the Super Bowl, you want a team like the Rams and the Chiefs. And I thought the Chiefs could have made it. They should have made it that year. That should have been a rematch, but it wasn't. And so when you get the Rams coming out, and that's with Jared Goff and Gurley, everybody was still, that's when we had him on the team. And, Mahomes was just there taking over. So for me to see all that coming through, I loved seeing that game and how exciting it is, because when you throw in fantasy football, you throw in a little bit of gambling and stuff. We didn't have gambling at that point, but when you throw it in, you kind of get really excited to just be like, yeah, that's my player. But at the same time, just watching that game go down. And you said you wanted a tightly contested game. That was that game as well, too. They scored well. That game was 51-49. It was insane. And it was close, and it came down to the final possession.
Yeah, I'm definitely into those like super nail biting games. Even though like I could have cared less, who won it. Like, I had no horse in that race whatsoever. But hey, a good game's a good game.
I think you raise a good point. So somebody like you who doesn't really care about it, but if you see a game like that go down, you can appreciate it.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I think that where it is. And I think that's what the NFL really does give us as a product in real life. And that's what they always do, is just that everything is awesome. Like you had the Super Bowl ending of this year between the Chiefs and the 49ers, where you had all the new overtime rules were in play, and San Francisco running the ball down there and then just going, hey, we're going to kick a field goal, and then seeing him get waxed by Mahomes again. And I'm like, it just to see that go down and the excitement to see them come back and stuff like that. Now, a lot of people are getting bored with the Chiefs, so they want to see something new. They kind of like that new toy. So, you're going to have all these people talking about Anthony Richardson, even though he's still gimpy. And, we don't need that right now. We just need this all to continue. The Chiefs have had their offseason problems. They're practically developing into the mid-90 Cowboys, and I'm down for it. I'm down for any kind of cool things. Yeah, some people get annoyed. Some people might not watch. That's not me. I know that ain't you.
I think before this gets on just a little too long, I say let's get into your final track. And I will say this might be a little controversial, depending on what your definition of sports is. I feel like you might change your mind after hearing this track, so I think it's pretty good. We're going to listen to Road Warrior from the game Need for Speed 4 High Stakes, and this was composed by Rom D. Prisco. That banger of a track that you guys just listened to, that was Road Warrior from the game Need for Speed 4 High Stakes, and that was composed by Ron D. Prisco.
Woo! You want to talk about a racing song? That's a racing song.
When I was doing my research, and by research I mean just listening to the tracks before the show, this one really stuck out to me. And this sounds a little bad, but I'm actually glad that this is like your last track. So I mean, we got to end things on a really high note. And it's not like we had any kind of a low point. It's just we're raising this to a whole nother level.
Yeah. And the way it played, it was like the way that you had the whole show laid out and you went, and we had our little ska moment, and then we kind of started getting into that NHL. You had the metal, you had the guitar, you had the thrash, and then now you just got the complete insanity of one of the greatest. I guess you can't really say it's a VGM album, but you can, because there's a lot by Rom on there, and Rom did a lot of work for a lot of other games as well. But at the same time, when you go and you step back and you look at the work he did, the people, the bands that are on this album is just amazing. You got, even like, I remember the song Callista he made. It's one of the menu songs. It's so dang smooth. And then the first time, mind you, this is my PC years, I ditched the PlayStation Need for Speeds. Of course, the first Need for Speed I ever played was on the 3DO. There was no music. It was cool, and I loved it. And then we got to a point where we just crash a car all the time and have that guy yell at us, which is the funniest thing. Like, that dude would get so mad when you crashed cars. He'd come over there the one time, this is the first time, there's a stupid little scene, and he's just sitting on a hill, a green hill under a tree. And he gets up and he walks down and he says something smart. He goes, "Well, you're going to be saying a lot more of these days the way you drive." And I'm like, what? And this guy's coming at you. And so you get to Need for Speed 2, and then you hear Need for Speed on the PlayStation, which, dude, there's a metal track on the original Need for Speed for the PlayStation. It was great. Then I started seeing it in the Walmart section, and I'm going Need for Speed 2 because that was the last one I bought. Well, Need for Speed 3 was the last one I bought for the PlayStation. I went to the Walmart and I saw a Need for Speed 2 special edition Walmart brand. And I'm like, what? And they had more cars. And I'm like, whoa, okay, well, let me get this game. So then, of course, Need for Speed 3 happens. And I'm like, go Hot Pursuit. Like, we're going to do this. And the cops are introduced and you're sitting there and you're racing. And then they drop the greatest gem ever in Need for Speed history. I don't care. People talk about Underground. I love Most Wanted, the original Most Wanted for PlayStation 2. And I will tell you this, other people go Underground 2. Underground 2 is probably the best. Some people will say Carbon. I'm telling you right now, for the time and the way it was, and to put that music on that CD like that, man, Need for Speed 4. And then the PC version. Now, the PC version, it would kick dirt up on your screen. The rain would beat up on your screen. Of course, I had, like I said, I had the voodoo. So I got all of that. You had the rocking tracks. And I actually had to take, it used to get annoying. I had to take the mud off because the mud would cover up the whole bottom of your screen. Then you couldn't see the track. What good is that, Alex? What you play a game like that? I mean, nowadays you do. But back then, when you seen something like that, it was crazy. Did you play any of these Need for Speeds back then?
The only one that I dabbled with a little bit was Underground 2, and really all that really stuck out to me was the actually pretty good licensed soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. That one. I mean, of course, as we were talking, EA has so much licensed music in their games now. Yeah, some of it's rocking, but that's why we couldn't use any of that. Now we're going to flip it back over and we're going to look at, Need for Speed 4, and that was, of course, high stakes. Again, the regular high stakes, only the regular high stakes. When you bought the PC version of high stakes, you got every single board from Need for Speed 3, Hot Pursuit, all the boards from Need for Speed 4. Also, Need for Speed 4 had an upgrade system. It's when they brought back the Firebird. I was so happy they brought back the Firebird. That car sucked along with the Camaro. You could upgrade them a little bit, get some streaks, get a little faster. But man, you had the Diablo, you had the Countach, you had everything you could want, and you had so many more cars because it was on the PC that you could actually mod it. I figured out how to mod it. Of course, you had these car makers. I put a Saturn in the car. People would do these, Dukes of Hazards. You would have them up in there. You could be the General Lee, and you could put anything. But the hardest part was if you had a picture of a car, it would put it in there, but you had to take all those little white dots and you had to put it around every single part of that car. Let me just tell you, I didn't do that. So my Saturn looked like a half a Saturn. And then I was like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. So that's the biggest thing about that. The game itself was huge, and it ended up becoming even more when it became Motor City Online, a game that a lot of people don't know. So when EA made Motor City Online, it went solely online. Now, mind you, I was playing people, racing people on my computer version of High Stakes. But when they did this full online, you had a salary every week. You went up against everybody that was playing this game. It was $10 a month, and you could upgrade small block. If you like big block, you could go big block. You had everything. You had the 70s Chevelle. You had the 70s Chevelle SS 454, favorite car ever. You had the hatchback Mustangs, the fastbacks, I should have said. And they started out with this 50s, and it was 40s, 50s, and 60s. They had 30s. They went into the 90s. They did this whole game, was just amazing. But when we talk about this and we talk about how amazing these games, all the memories we have, the VGM, it comes back to Lunatic Calm, Roll the Dice. The first time I heard Roll the Dice, the computer, of course, had it just lifting over the road track. And it Roll the Dice, it has that nice little bring in where it's like, yeah, and it's just cruising. And then you get into your cockpit, and then you get the lights, red, orange. And right when that green hits, that music would drop, and you knew you were in for a hell of a race. Yeah.
Man, that sounds pretty amazing.
It truly was. I can always remember it. But go on, man. Like, think about that. Like, you listened to one track. Did you pop off any of the other tracks?
I have not. And I was seeing that, like, it is a pretty big soundtrack, so there's definitely a whole lot to take in. But yeah, that's I've only really scratched the surface.
That's the thing, is you said what you just brought up. That's a huge soundtrack, and in the work that ROM had to do to fill in all those other songs was crazy. Like, you could have probably played Lunatic Calm, Roll the Dice, and you wouldn't get flagged, because nobody, like, they're just so ignorant to that type of music, which was white noise at the time. And this CD, I went and bought the CD, the album, and it's literally one of my most favorite albums ever. They had the first song was used by the Charlie's Angels. It wasn't Roll the Dice. Leave You Far Behind. That song right there. And then they actually made a second CD. I had to rip from LimeWire. Sorry, Simon. He might, if he ever listens to this, he'd be like, hey, that guy ripped my CD. He re-released this and said that this album had been sitting in a warehouse in like Nevada or somewhere. It was finished. All the production was done, but it was never sold. They never let it out. So whoever put this album on LimeWire and was allowed me to get, so the first album, of course, that I'm talking about was Metropole. That's where Roll the Dice is. Their second one is called Breaking Point. I started my podcast with Beatbox Breaking, because at the beginning of Beatbox Breaking, and then he breaks it right into the beat. Those two CDs, and then what I follow Simon now, I talk to Simon now, and my musical influences, DJ Magic Mike during this time, Need for Speed 4, bringing it in. You had EA going into metal more. When you throw all this together, this is what my mind became musically.
Sounded like you just went on one hell of a journey.
I think I did go on a journey on your journey podcast. That's what it is. You know, when you get something and it's passionate like that, and it shapes your life, and then actually being able to talk to Simon and have him talk with me and respond to me, and when I post things and he goes and he likes it, it shows that ounce of respect. I mean, Mike, who's DJ Magic Mike, being able to actually meet him and hang out with him, have beers with him, and have the relationship that me, my wife, and my friends have with him is truly amazing. He's in the States, whereas Simon's back in the States. I haven't had a chance yet to really see him, even when he was Zodiac Cartel back in the day, and now he's Elite Force, but, he's always going to be Simon to me. So that started with this game. It started with the soundtrack. It started with the times that I remembered racing online. I didn't need my friends. My friends didn't have, a PC or something like that to play with me. This was a definite single player game that you could play any time of the day, any time of the week, and just really take your mind off. In the soundtrack going, whether it's crazy like the track we played with Road Warrior, or if you want to go cool and calm like Callista, and there's more. This was hard. Picking one song out of this entire soundtrack was very hard. I was going to go with one of the first few songs. I went with Road Warrior because I love the way the song actually progresses.
I'm actually really glad that you went with Road Warriors. I mean, I really like this.
Thank you.
This was a jam.
Yeah, that's what you want with the racing games. That's what like Road Rash and all those games were bringing at the time too.
Road Rash definitely has really good music.
I agree with that. The only problem is I wish I would have bought it when it was super cheap for the 3DO because I have that and I would have been able to still have that. Instead, here I am. Nope.
Well, I'll tell you this. What you have is one hell of an episode that we got here.
This is fun.
And I think we're about at that time where, we got to wrap things up.
Good. That's good.
So that's going to just about do it for the show this week. If you guys like what you've been listening to, have your friends check out the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify. Started releasing episodes of the show on YouTube of all places now. So you could definitely check that out. You just look up a VGM Journey. You can email the show at vgmjourney@yahoo.com, and you could also check us out on X at VGM Journey. We also have a Discord server for the show, which HeatOOveride you're definitely familiar with, where you can hang out with your fellow VGM journeymen, talk about games, music, and even look at some cool art. And I want to say, HeatOOveride, this was a really fun episode to do, and thank you for coming on to the show.
I want to say the thanks is all you, and you're welcome. You've been on my show twice. I definitely want to get on your show because of the way you present this, everything, and just what you did, like when you brought up the Discord and talking and just being able to relate and see some cool art or talk even Kung Fu flicks. Kung Fu Carlito and me, we talked for a whole day about Kung Fu flicks because I can't talk with people about Kung Fu flicks because nobody knows what I'm talking about except my one friend Dave. He's the only one, and that's it. Like when I look at somebody and I go, Shenzhen from Jinwu, the best. Nobody gets that. They don't get it, but I do. And that's why every time you see a hashtag the best or anything that I ever post, that's because of that.
Yeah, definitely trying to get a little bit of everything on that Discord server. And yeah, do you have anything that you would like to plug and let everyone know about?
Yeah, so you can follow all my work also on YouTube, on my Spreaker. That's where I get a lot of my main things. I also have a supporters club on there. That's where you get the real edgy stuff, like things that make me a jerk. Those little situations in life where you're not at fault and someone puts you into the wrong on the wrong side. Bam! Now you're the jerk. Now everybody's looking at you. Things like that I like to try to bring. So you can find me there. You can find me on the Twix, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at HeatOOveride, just one regular O. You'll see me do a lot of work for drroto.com. I do all my podcasts, the football podcast, any other baseball podcast, all of my articles, sports articles, writings, everything is there. Of course, a lot of it is behind the paywall. The podcasts aren't if you like sports. And you can find me on any platform. You can find me on Spotify. You can find me on iHeart. You can find me on Apple and iTunes or anything, because that's the one cool thing about Spreaker is they outsource to like 10 different places, and it's awesome.
Definitely some good stuff, and I will provide a link for your show in the show notes. So I definitely recommend everyone to check out Bring the Pain and also your various different social platforms and all that. And we're going to play things out with one more track, and I think this is a really good one.
Oh, yeah.
This is Play Ball from the game Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball, and this was composed by Chris Jojo. Have a good one, everyone.
That's how we do it.